This is day 24 of the war and a briefing. It's October 30th at 8:30 p.m. in Israel and 2:30 p.m. in the Eastern Standard Time Zone in America. Okay, so let's start with good news. Good news is we just found out that a IDF soldier was rescued. One of the soldiers that was taken hostage during the October 7th massacre was rescued. It means that the IDF found her. Supposedly overnight raids last night inside of Gaza. This is great news. Really, really great news. There's nothing really that's bad about this. It's amazing. It shows that a lot of our hostages are still alive. It shows that there is a possibility of rescuing them. It means that when IDF soldiers are getting close, Hamas's orders are not to kill the hostages. So this is good news all around, and really thank God. Really have a lot of gratitude to show to God, to show to our soldiers, our brave soldiers who are over in Gaza, and that's great. So Uri Pilichowski is the soldier's name, and we're really happy to have her home, and I'm sure her family is ecstatic, and we hope that her recovery from her ordeal goes smoothly, and she's able to get back to herself as fast as possible. Okay, the operation is going pretty great, pretty great. We have a lot of soldiers have crossed into Gaza, tanks have crossed into Gaza. What Israel is trying to do, just to understand the situation here, Israel is trying to take over North Gaza. What they're trying to do is clear out. The objective of this war is to get rid of all Palestinian terrorists, all of Hamas, all of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, anybody that has tried or will try or wants to try to kill Jews. Our objective here is to eliminate them from the face of the earth. And we have to do this instead of just a rush-in way, in a methodical way. And that's exactly what the Israeli army is doing. They have come in from the north of Gaza. They've taken over the areas right across the border. They've gotten rid of the Hamas people there. They've brought in tanks, and they've brought in infantrymen that surround the tanks. The tanks go in and destroy massive targets. The infantrymen take out anybody that's there that can shoot down a tank with anti-tank missiles. The infantrymen take care of them. The tanks take care of the larger targets. They're bringing in DC-9s, or the massive bulldozer type things that take down structures that could be used to attack soldiers from. And slowly but surely, the soldiers take in. Now, what's amazing is that the soldiers are not just going north to south, but they've taken the coastline in North Gaza, which means that they've also taken the west. So they have the west, they have the north side. They're pushing in from the Israeli side, from the east, and slowly but surely taking over large swaths of Gaza back from Hamas and back from the terrorists. And they're doing this again slowly but surely in a way that's calculated. And our soldiers are having immense success. Thank God for that. Thank God for their bravery. You can only imagine how terrifying it is to go into enemy territory. This is not territory where you find friendly people. Everybody is going to be hostile to you. Some people deadly hostile. So this is an amazing accomplishment that we're 2 days in from the incursion, and we've taken over large swaths of land. Now, just to understand, this is not going to be quick. In other words, we have two ways of doing this. We do this quick, and we lose a lot of soldiers. We can do this slowly, and we start taking over large parts of land in a very slow way. And that way, we take piece by piece by piece. And we keep going throughout Gaza, making sure that whatever's left in our wake does not have any terrorists. We find the tunnels. We wait till the terrorists come out of the tunnels, and then our soldiers wipe them out. And then we drop bombs either from drones or from fighter jets onto them. If we see onto the tunnels, and destroy the tunnels. We drop a missile straight down into the tunnel and destroy the tunnel that way. If we see large collections of Hamas terrorists, or any terrorists basically in Gaza, we call in an airstrike and knock them out. We bring in more tanks, move the tanks forward even more, keeping the tanks moving so that they don't become stationary targets. And the soldiers make sure that also nobody's coming in from Gaza across the border, and making sure that we're gaining territory. Now, again, we're not trying to capture territory. We're not trying to capture land. What we're trying to do is make sure that we erase the terrorist presence from large swaths of Gaza. We're going to go through all of Gaza and eventually have cleared out the entire thing. We also have good news that the Mossad chief flew to Qatar which is again the country that funds Hamas, but also is friends with the United States. So trying to negotiate the release of hostages. What Israel will have to give up is yet to be seen. Hamas sort of let this offer go that they would, in exchange for a cessation of all fighting, they would give up their hostages, and as long as Israel released all Palestinian terrorists that are in Israeli jails. That's obviously not going to happen. The families tried pressuring the Israeli government. We're not judging families here. Tried pressuring the Israeli government to go into the deal. And Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant explained to the families that these aren't really genuine deals. Hamas is playing psychological warfare with us. But it's good that we are in the midst of negotiations, at least with something like Qatar, which allows us to have maybe some sort of hope, different directions of trying to get the hostages free. Okay. Bad news. Bad news is that there was a terror attack in Yerushalayim. A police officer was seriously stabbed on the light rail. If you're familiar with how Yerushalayim works, there's a light rail train that goes through Yerushalayim. So this is in East Yerushalayim, which is an area that Israel took in 1967 and united Yerushalayim. And this was in a more Haredi section of Yerushalayim. On one side of the light rail is a Haredi neighborhood, and the other side is all Palestinian Arabs. Arabs identify themselves as Palestinians. They are Jerusalem residents. And one of them went up to a police officer who was waiting at the train station and stabbed him seriously. Thank God that the terror attack did not get any worse than that. We also had a rocket attack on Yerushalayim today. So Iron Dome, thank God, stopped it, but people had to run into their shelters in Yerushalayim. And the reason why we have rockets every day. The reason why rockets in Yerushalayim is so bad for Israel, because it demoralizes us. It brings the war to our capital city, and that should be a place that's safe for Jews and should not be a target of rocket attacks. But unfortunately, it is. And today it reminded us of that. It brings the war home to a lot of people, literally home. It brings the fighting into their homes by having them run for shelter. Also, bad news: we had violence in Jenin. Okay, so Jenin is a Palestinian village in what the world calls the West Bank. We call Yehuda v'Shomron. It's in the Shomron section. It's more north. It is a hotbed of terrorism. It's known as one of the major essential areas of terrorism inside of the West Bank, inside Judea and Samaria. There's been clashes the entire year there, and so there were clashes last night. The IDF killed 4 terrorists, and we don't know the numbers of how many were arrested. Turkey and its President Erdogan. So every couple of years, there's whenever we have a flare-up in Gaza, so Erdogan breaks off relations with Israel. Keep in mind that Turkey is a Muslim country. It's not an Arab country. It's a Muslim country, and because it's a Muslim country, so Erdogan feels the need to always take the Hamas's side and the people of Gaza's side, and he usually does it in a despicable way instead of just saying that he disagrees with Israel or thinks that Israel is bad. Today he threatened to go to war with Israel. He talked about how Israel's committing genocide, all the common type of hot-headed type of Arab world vitriol that we had against Israel. He started spouting. Now this is bad because, number one, we had started a rapprochement with Turkey. So that's over. You don't get to threaten us that you're going to come at us and declare war on us and then hope for rapprochement later on like he always does. Second of all, Turkey is a NATO member, so it's allies with the United States. So this puts the United States in an awkward position when Turkey's going against another one of its allies. So this is not a good situation. Also, last issue of bad news was that there was a hostage video put out by Hamas. Now, we have to keep in mind, we're going to see a lot of psychological warfare from Hamas, trying to make us feel horrible. It understands that Jews are kind, Jews are merciful, and Jews are empathetic, and they care about others. And they understand that the psychological warfare of putting up a hostage to talk and ask for things it just kills every Jew to see this. And they know that, and they've got 250 people that they could have be making videos on their behalf. So this was 3 hostages that they had making videos who were criticizing Bibi Netanyahu, obviously forced by by Hamas to do so and to make a public video. Puts the hostages in an impossible situation. We can't judge them poorly, but we can judge Hamas poorly. And this is, again, it's meant to terrorize the families of the hostages and get them to try to convince Prime Minister Netanyahu to do things not in Israel's best interest in order to get the hostages freed. And it just traumatizes the Israeli population watching, knowing that this is just 3 of the 250 somewhat hostages that are there, and they're being treated this way. Imagine what everybody else is being treated like. So it's hard to watch these videos, and we hope that we're able to rescue the hostages soon, so we don't have to watch anymore. But that's the story with those hostage videos. Okay, President Biden asked Israel to open up more aid into Gaza, to allow more aid to go into Gaza. Again, we've discussed in the past the strategy here. The strategy is that as long as more aid is flowing into Gaza, Israel and its allies can claim that Israel's bombing of Hamas is not affecting the average Palestinian. Today, the talking point of the Palestinians out of Gaza is that Israel's bombing is causing a humanitarian crisis. There's not enough food, there's not enough water, there's not enough electricity, there's not enough doctors. Now, we have no idea if this is true. We don't know anything that comes out of Gaza is true or not, because we know that Hamas lies, we know that they exaggerate, so we have no idea what to believe anymore. So we don't know if 3,000 children were killed, or if 1,000 children were killed, or if no children were killed. We have no idea the extent of the damage that Israel bombing does, because the Hamas media center and health ministry just straight out lie whenever it suits them. So you really can't trust what they say. But more aid to Gaza that President Biden is asking for, again, is in order to show that the United States and Israel is taking care of the people in Gaza. It gets the progressives, the progressive members of the Democratic Party, who are only concerned with the humanitarian condition and could care less about, and we'll get into this in a minute, could care less about Israel. It gets them off everybody's back, because President Biden is able to turn to them and say, I just negotiated with the Israelis, then more aid should come through. Okay, now, interesting, there's a video going around of Hillary Clinton speaking yesterday, and I guess she was asked the question about forcing Israel into a ceasefire. And she made a very interesting point, which is that anybody that's asking for a ceasefire doesn't understand Hamas, because what Hamas will do with the ceasefire is they will simply just use it to rearm themselves and reorganize themselves. So you can't have a ceasefire which allows your enemy to use that time to regroup and be able to fight you better when the ceasefire is over. So temporary ceasefire, she said, doesn't work with a country like Hamas. Or an organization, a group of terrorists like Hamas, and it's not right to ask for a ceasefire because it's only helping enemies. I agree with former Secretary Clinton, but I think that there's one thing that she's being a little naive about, or is just not talking about, which is that most of these people clearly understand. They very, very much understand what they're asking for. Okay, and they know that what they're doing is they are very much asking and trying to make sure that Israel's war efforts are not as successful. Okay, so it's not that that these people that are negotiating for the ceasefire, asking for the ceasefire, don't understand what Hamas is all about. They clearly understand the situation. They understand the ceasefire is going to hurt Israel. They pretend that they're interested in humanitarian issues, and some probably are, right? We're generalizing here, but many of them understand that by asking for a ceasefire, what they're really doing is protecting the Hamas and Palestinian terrorists against an Israeli onslaught, which is about to happen, and specifically calling for a ceasefire exactly when Israel steps up its actions in order to make sure that it does not have an opportunity to be able to defeat Hamas. Okay, we shouldn't be naive and think that everybody against us is interested in humanitarian needs. Most of the people that are arguing against Israel today care less about humanitarian needs, and the reason why you know that is because they never protest against other countries that are discriminating and making life for the Palestinians difficult and challenging. Okay, there are more attacks coming in from Hezbollah in the north. Israel's slowly but surely taking care of them. We don't really have a full picture of what's going on up there, other than we know that it's a lot of combinations of tank fire and mortar fire and airplane bombings coming from the Israeli side. Okay, to answer questions here. Okay, so we had we got questions. So on our last video, and again, if you have any questions, please write them down in the comment section on the YouTube video. So that way, I'd like a lot of these videos to be shorter in terms of the amount that of information that I tell, and a lot more of answering questions. So please, in the comment section, ask questions. So this question is, this is from yesterday's video being answered now, why aren't hostages a priority? So it's interesting, the hostages are a priority, they're not the number one priority. Okay, the number one priority is making sure that there not be any more hostages in the future. We could probably work out a deal right now to get the hostages back, but it would require us to put Israel in a precarious security situation where either we're giving back thousands upon thousands of terrorists, and then who are just going to commit more terror attacks. That's what we did with Gilad Shalit. Gilad Shalit, we negotiated. Gilad Shalit was an Israeli soldier taken captive by Hamas in Gaza. We negotiated his release, and we released 1,050 Hamas terrorists or Palestinian terrorists. Many of those terrorists went back to commit more terror attacks, and Jews died. Those terrorists should never have been freed. So it's not that we're not prioritizing, it's not that we're not making hostages a priority. They're just not our number one priority, because we have to make sure that we kill all the people that could act as threats against us in the future. Are there any updates as to updates on where or how the hostages are doing? So no, we don't know anything. The Hamas obviously will not allow International Red Cross or anybody into the hostages. All we've seen is the hostage that was freed and the hostages that made the video lately. So no. Do we think hostages have lost their lives because of airstrikes or terror? No. Hamas loves doing this. Hamas loves announcing that Israel did an airstrike and killed some of their own hostages. That's not going to be true. Hostages are not going to be killed by Israel. It doesn't make any sense for Hamas to allow that to happen. Each of these hostages are much more valuable to Hamas alive than dead. So they're not going to put them in a place where they might get hit by an Israeli bomb. It's very important to recognize that, okay? So when you see reports that they were hit by an Israeli bomb, that's just Hamas playing psychological games with us, okay, to get us to be like, oh my gosh, we should stop the bombing because we killed, they announced the other day that we killed 50 hostages. No, there's no way. Okay, that is the end of the video and the end of the questions. So if you have any questions, please write them down in the comment section, and I'll try my very best to answer them in the next video. Shalom from Israel, place in the future, victory of the Israeli people and the Israeli army.